Tonight we continue with that fine tradition, and I know that Nicholas Carolan is going to give us a lot to think about and a lot to enjoy. As I said already, 2003 is the bicentenary of Robert Emmet, rising when he hoped to spearhead an idealistic bunch of people towards national insurrection and freedom. I think his idealistic stand, taken with that small group, has made him one of Dublin's great folk heroes. As I said at a previous Emmet occasion, a few years ago somebody like me wouldn't have been able to say that. I'm somebody who grew up in a Republican tradition, but somebody who, because of the events of the last 30 years, was deeply unwilling to associate myself with elements of the nationalist and Republican cause, and I'm delighted that following the Good Friday Agreement and the cessation of violence, that people like me can once again begin to assert the legitimate struggle for Irish self-determination and freedom. And that's one of the reasons why I was personally delighted to get involved in the Emmet 200 campaign. Robert Emmet himself, as you know, was born in St. Stephen's Green, just around the corner from here, into a very prosperous Dublin family, and sadly his life has ended some years later, 25 years later, outside St. Catherine's Church as a traitor to the then British Empire. He was a man of great character, of great idealism, and I think someone that we can deeply look up to. One of the side effects of the last 30 years has been that some of the great songs that many of us grew up with haven't been heard on, in particular, the National Broadcasting Service over the last 30 years. And I hope that some of those songs that we will hear tonight, some of them, can once again be heard on the National Broadcasting Service, on RTE, so that we can celebrate that legitimate struggle. Of course, the words of Emmet's fairly impassioned speech from the dock resonate through all of us who went to school, particularly those of us who went to school in the Christian Brothers. We either learned it or was beaten into it, but one way or the other, we remember that speech, and it is still a speech that evokes very stirring passions in a lot of people. As I said already, Nicholas Carolan needs very little introduction. The director of the Irish Traditional Music Archive, set up in 1987, has already had a remarkable record in compiling, collating, and ensuring that the traditional music sector and the works of traditional music is not forgotten. Nicholas lectured in Trinity College for 12 years. He's done, as I think many of you will know, a lot of work on TV and radio. From West Along the Road, presently showing on RTE, is probably one of his most well-known contemporary contributions to the ensuring that the memory of Irish folk music and traditional music is not lost. He's researched, published, written on all sorts of aspects of Irish traditional music, and tonight we're going to see the fruits of the next stage of his contribution to the memory of Irish traditional music. With such an impressive record, it would be wrong of me to go on. I've already gone on longer than I intended. It would be wrong of me to take from what I believe will be a very important lecture, an important contribution. I'm thrilled that so many people are here. I look forward to the lecture. I look forward to the music. I hope all of you have a good night. I hope you enjoy yourself in the Mansion House, and I should have said this at the beginning, you're all very welcome to the Mansion House. So have a good evening. Thanks for listening to me, and best of luck. Nicholas Carolan.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I have to thank Ms. Deirdre Ellis-King, Dublin City Librarian, for the invitation to give this, and also Dr. Moira Kennedy, Special Collections Librarian of the City Libraries, and her staff for facilitation of the invitation in various ways. During the years that I've lived in Dublin, I spent many hours in the Gilbert Library, and have much reason to be grateful to Sir John Gilbert and the Dublin Corporation that bought his magnificent collection of books, pamphlets, and other printed items for public use. Irish songs of rebellion form an old and a varied tradition. They existed long before Emmet's time, and they've flourished since his death. It's a tradition of which the origins and the early forms are unknown, and of course it's a tradition which still continues. I'm sure there are waste charge songs from the last year or to recent years. By way of setting the tone for the kind of Irish songs of rebellion, or subversive songs, or patriotic songs that we'll be dealing with here, because there are many kinds of such songs, I've asked Barry Gleeson, a friend who's providing our live illustrations tonight, and to whom I'm very greatly obliged, I've asked Barry to sing a famous 19th century patriotic song of anonymous authorship, by memory inspired.
By memory inspired and by love of country fired, the deeds of men I love to dwell upon, and the patriotic glow of my spirit must bestow a tribute to the men that are gone, boys gone. Here's a memory to the men that are gone. In October 97, may his soul find rest in heaven. William Orr to execution was led on. A jury drunk agreed that Irish was his creed. For perjury and threats drove them on, boys on. Here's a memory to the men that are gone. In 98, the month July, the informer's pay was high. When Reynolds gave the gallows brave McCann. McCann was Reynolds' first, but one could not allay his thirst. So he sent up bond and barn that are gone, boys gone. Here's a memory to the friends that are gone. We saw a nation's tears shed for John and Henry Shears, betrayed by Judas Captain Armstrong. We may forgive, but yet we never will forget the fate of Joan and Emmet that are gone, boys gone. Of all the fearless men that are gone. How did Lord Edward die? Like a man without a sigh. But he left his handiwork on Major Swan, but sore with steel-clad breast, and a coward's heart at best, left his cause to mourn Lord Edward that is gone, boys gone. Here's a memory to the friends that are gone. September 1803 closed this cruel history, when Emmet's blood the scaffold flowed upon. Those heroes died that we might yet our freedom see. So here's a memory to the friends that are gone, boys gone. Here's a memory to brave men that are gone.
The very earliest songs of rebellion sung on this island were songs on a local scale, songs which operated at interfamilial or intertribal or interregional levels. But in speaking about songs of rebellion with reference to Robert Emmet, we are necessarily talking about songs of recent centuries which have a national as well as possible local consciousness. You'll note that the question of just when a national political consciousness arose in Ireland is a matter of debate among historians. Many would agree that concepts of nationality really began to develop among the Irish in the 16th century, as the Tudor reconquest of Ireland began to get underway with its incendiary alien elements of race, religion and language. The Elizabethan poet Edmund Spenser, author of The Faerie Queene, worked as an official in the royal service in Ireland, and he recorded some of his observations of Irish life in his prose dialogue of the 1590s, A View of the Present State of Ireland. And he said, with reference to songs of rebellion, "There is among the Irish a certain kind of people called the bards, whose profession is to set forth the praises and dispraises of men in their poems and rhymes. Their verses are usually sung at all feasts and meetings by certain other persons whose proper function that is. These Irish bards are for the most part far from instructing young men in moral discipline, but whomsoever they find to be most licentious of life, most bold and lawless in his doings, most dangerous and desperate in all parts of disobedience and rebellious disposition, him they set up and glorify in their rhymes. Him they praise to the people, and the young men make an example to follow, tending for the most part to the hurt of the English or maintenance of their own lewd liberty." So, major themes of Irish songs of rebellion are already in evidence there in the late 1500s. Praise of the rebellious individual as an admirable exemplar, the pursuit of Irish liberty, and opposition to English power within Ireland. The songs that Spencer refers to are, of course, in the Irish language. He speaks elsewhere of having them translated for him. And there's a long and a rich tradition of such songs in Irish dealing with the whole matter of Irish politics as seen essentially from a Gaelic and Catholic perspective. But the songs of Robert Emmet, and indeed Robert Emmet himself, don't belong to the Irish language political tradition, except in a very peripheral way. So important as the Irish language tradition is in its own right, it doesn't really concern us here tonight. The songs of Robert Emmet belong instead to Ireland's English language tradition of rebel songs, obviously a tradition which developed later than that of the Irish. As Hugh Shields has told us in his study Narrative Singing in Ireland, the earliest known such songs were in existence at least by the 1590s, that decade again, when Dublin Castle proclaimed a list of imports, which began with papist vestments and also included books, ballads and songs, for the importing of which a fine or imprisonment would be incurred. Ballad sheets were actually being printed and published in Dublin from at least the 1620s, and some of these early sheets were also politically subversive. Candidates of the Williamite Boyne Water, which commemorated the victory at the Boyne in 1690, and the Jacobite The Blackbird, which appeared after the unsuccessful Scottish uprising of 1715, and which seems to be of Irish authorship. There was some earlyish political ballad publishing in Cork also. An elegy on James Cotter of about 1720, for instance, is a manifestation of the celebrated execution of a prominent Catholic in the period of penal laws. And an outpouring of songs provoked from the merchant classes of Dublin by the introduction of Wood's halfpence in the early 1720s could be seen as a specialised class of Irish songs of rebellion. By and large, these songs in English reflect the concerns of the colony in Ireland rather than the colonised. By Emmet's time, these early intimations of national consciousness, which had encompassed only concerns of one side or other of the population, had developed to include, in theory, if not usually in practice, Protestant, Catholic and Dissenter. The Irish political songs which are most likely to have had a strong influence on the young Emmet are the many songs of the late 18th century which dealt with questions of national freedom and democratic governance, and which were inspired by such seminal events as the American War of Independence, which began in 1775, the foundation and rise of the volunteer movement from 1777, the establishment of Grattan's Parliament, which sat from 1782, and especially the outbreak of the French Revolution in 1789. The great printed collection of such radical songs was Paddy's Resource, the United Irishmen collection, which appeared in several popular editions from the mid-1790s, and which reflected all these political developments. From it, to represent the whole genre, here is a snatch of the Carmagnole, sung in 1993 by Kerry singer Tim Dennehy. Carmagnole is a short French jacket which was associated with the Jacobin cause.
Assemble all great liberty, and the patriots danced all around it. And was not I of telling thee, the French could fight right heartily, and the Carmagnole would make you free, oh, but you would never mind me. In 94 a new campaign, the tools of darkness did maintain. Gallia's sons did form and train, and left their foes surrounded. They and the Carmagnole would make you free. Oh, but you will never find me until the forest to ships and sea.
Great liberty, patriots, sons of freedom, foes confounded, tyrants shaking, victory. These and many similar songs echo the concerns of the young and maturing Robert Emmet. Having put Emmet in song context to this degree, it's time now to approach more closely to the man himself. The salient facts of his life are clear enough and have been most recently presented in a new 2002 biography by Patrick M. Gagan, to which I'm indebted. Robert Emmet was born in privileged circumstances a few hundred yards away from this building in St. Stephen's Green in 1778. He was the 17th and final child of Dr. Robert Emmet Sr. and his wife Elizabeth Mason, who were both originally from Cork. Dr. Emmet was a state physician for Ireland and was well connected by birth. One of his cousins was Lord Lieutenant for Ireland in the 1780s. Another was the first British Consul General to the United States. And remarkably, a more distant cousin was William Pitt the Younger, Prime Minister of Britain from 1783. Robert Emmet Jr. was the fifth child of the name to have been born to the couple, and he was one of only 3 brothers and 1 sister to survive infancy. He attended Samuel White's famous school on Grafton Street, where Bewley's is now, and where a younger fellow pupil was Thomas Moore, destined to become Ireland's national poet. Emmet, like Moore, although in different ways, was a precocious and highly idealistic child. He excelled at oratory, mathematics, and the sciences. He was early exposed to radical views. His father was a strong Irish patriot and sympathised with the American revolutionaries. William Drennan was a family friend. His older brother, Thomas Addis Emmet, a doctor and lawyer, became a prominent leader of the United Irishmen, and following years of imprisonment in Scotland after 1798, would spend the rest of his life in exile on the continent and in the United States. Robert Emmet entered Trinity College at the age of 15. It's remarkable how small a bubble he lived in, from Stephen's Green to Grafton Street to Trinity. And Thomas Moore was again a fellow student and friend. Both were supporters of the United Irishmen. In a familiar anecdote, Moore later recalled a prophetic occasion in their college years when he was playing over to Emmet melodies from Edward Bunting's recently published collection of harp airs, a general collection of the ancient Irish music of 1796. Emmet was listening in reverie, but when Moore played a martial-sounding air, The Little Red Fox, he started up and exclaimed passionately, "Oh, that I were at the head of 20,000 men marching to that air." Well, this is that air, The Little Red Fox, but we know it better from the song that Moore later wrote to the air, Let Erin Remember. It's played here from a recording of the 1920s by what was then the new #1 army band conducted by Colonel Fritz Brassey. Must have marched to that in the early years of the Free State. But even as a student, Emmet was contemplating leading men into battle. There's one small difficulty with Moore's story. The air doesn't actually appear in Bunting's volume of 1796, or indeed in any other early printed source of the period. Their fellow Trinity student and United Irishman, Edward Hudson, who was a very musical flute player, has been suggested as a source, but it seems to me as likely that the highly musical Moore could have heard it from his father, who was an Irish speaker from Moyvan, County Kerry, or indeed from the general tradition, because on Motherina Rua, the Little Red Fox, is still sung today. At any rate, there's no reason to doubt the essential truth of the anecdote, that Moore, as a student, played this martial air, and that his fellow student Emmet was memorably affected by it. Emmet excelled in his studies at Trinity College and was an outstanding orator, destined, like his brothers, for a distinguished career at the bar when politics intervened. He was secretary of one of the illegal committees of the United Irishmen within the college, and after the arrest of his brother Thomas Addis for planning rebellion, he decided to leave the college rather than obey regulations which prescribed the organisation. He was then expelled in April 1798, and he more or less went on the run. He seems to have joined the directory of the United Irishmen, though he didn't take part in the 1798 rebellion. He became involved, however, with those planning the next rebellion and ensuring that it wouldn't be affected by informers. During this period, Emmet wrote several poems which appeared in radical newspapers. They were not for singing, and Dowland said about Emmet that he sometimes hummed a tune, but that he was no great singer. However, one of Emmet's best poems, Arbour Hill, which was inspired by the graves of executed 1798 rebels in Dublin, was set to music about 50 years ago by the late Micheál Mac Liammóir of the Walton's programme of radio fame. There are no recordings of it that I know about, but we do have a notation of the tune, thanks to Terry Moylan, who published it in his recent volume, The Age of Revolution, the Irish Song Tradition, 1780 to 1815. And a colleague in the Irish Traditional Music Archive, Joan McDermott, kindly agreed to record it for use in this lecture. And this is as close as we can come to a song by Robert Emmet.
The plans and all the three.
Many a victim lies, but all the blood which here has streamed to heaven for justice cries. It claims it on the oppressor's head, who joys in human woe, who drinks the tears by misery shed, and mocks them as they flow. It claims it on the callous judge, whose hands in blood are dyed, who arms injustice with the sword, the balance throws aside. It claims it for his ruined isle, our wretched children's grave, our wretched children's grave, where freedom withered droops her head, and man exists a slave.
These things are great when they work, but when they don't. Thank you, John. A callous judge with hands dyed in blood, memories forever blessed, and endless fame. These are the things on Emmet's mind about 1800. And strangely, the callous judge of the song was Lord Norbury, who a few years later would sentence Emmet to death. After the passage of the Act of Union in June 1800, Emmet was sent as secretary of a secret United Irishmen delegation to France, where he remained until 1802, having meetings with the French about a possible invasion of Ireland and studying military tactics and the science of explosives. In 1801, he had meetings with Napoleon Bonaparte, the first consul, of whom he had a very poor opinion. And it's odd to think of these two, who feature so much in the Irish song tradition, actually meeting. There's an intriguing sighting of what may be Robert Emmet in France in the United Irishman song published in Dundalk in 1802. It's an old version of what later became one of the most popular Irish songs ever, The Wearing of the Green. The early version is called Green on My Cape, and it's very corrupt and fragmented text and not really singable. It's never been recorded that I know of, and indeed couldn't be recorded as it stands, but it begins as one or two lines that are okay, you know. I'm a man that's going to travel and must quit my native land. There's an oath sworn out against me, in my country I can't stand. Then the scansion falls apart, but the speaker leaves Dublin, goes to Wexford, meets a ship's captain and crew who are United sympathisers. He's brought across to Flanders, then he goes to France, and then this is the relevant verse. In Brest I met Emmet, who took me by the hand, and asked me for Ireland, and how did it now stand. Such a poor distressed nation you never have seen. They hang men and women for wearing of the green. Sorry, I don't do this normally, but there's no choice in this. So there is Emmet, or seems to be Emmet in France in 1802. Now the name that I take as Emmet is actually represented in the text by a capital E, a long dash and a final T, just as Ireland in the next line is represented by a capital I, a long dash and a final D. So I suppose it is possible that some name other than Emmet is meant, although I can't think what, and it's possible that the Emmet in question was Thomas Addis Emmet, although as far as I can establish, he wasn't in France as early as 1802, and Robert was. So Emmet is possibly a forerunner of Nappertandy in the popular later version of the song. The story after Emmet's return to Ireland in late 1802 is well known. He was invited to assist in the new scheme of rebellion and was assigned a prominent role in the secret preparations. His father died and left him a legacy which he dedicated to these preparations. He met and fell in love with Sarah Curran, the 20-year-old daughter of the prominent lawyer John Philpott Curran. Depots for arms were rented at strategic points in the city, and rockets and other military items were prepared. Emmet lived incognito in a house in Rathfarnham, where he was looked after by Anne Devlin, niece of the Wicklow insurgent Michael Dwyer. The rebellion began on the 23rd of July 1803, but was inadequately prepared and soon disintegrated in confusion and random bloodshed. The most prominent victim was Lord Kilwarden, a Privy Councillor who was unlucky enough to be passing by in his coach. The outbreak was easily suppressed. Emmet and some of his men escaped to Rathfarnham and then to the Wicklow Mountains. A month later, Emmet was captured in Harold's Cross by Major Sir. A month later again, he had been found guilty of treason at a trial presided over by Lord Norbury, and without delay he was hanged and then beheaded opposite St. Catherine's Church on Thomas Street on the 20th of September 1803. He met his death bravely at the age of 25, but there was no public outcry. More than probable that we wouldn't be here tonight if Emmet had not availed, at the end of his trial, of been asked if he had any reason to give why the judgment of death and execution should not be passed against him according to law. The speech he gave from the dock in reply, with interruptions by Norbury, has resounded through the centuries, and is the single most important reason why Robert Emmet is remembered today as a great Irish patriot. It's a long speech, but this is the famous last minute of it, as delivered by Micheál Mac Liammóir in the 1960s.
Is nearly extinguished. My race is run. The grave opens to receive me, and I sink into its bosom. I have but one request to ask at my departure from this world. It is the charity of its silence. Let no man write my epitaph, for as no man who knows my motives dares now vindicate them, let not prejudice or ignorance asperse them. Let them and me rest in obscurity and peace. Let my tomb remain uninscribed and my memory in oblivion, until other times and other men can do justice to my character. When my country takes her place among the nations of the earth, then, and not till then, let my epitaph be written. I have done.
As G.K. Chesterton said, Emmet made an epitaph of the refusal of an epitaph. Versions of Emmet's speech in the dock have been redelivered innumerable times over the past 200 years in a great variety of circumstances, private, public, political gatherings, on the stage from 1806, and especially the fit-ups that some of you will remember, on commercial recordings in Irish America from the early 1920s, on radio and television and so on. Versions have been reprinted innumerable times and remind us indeed that performances of historic speeches and recitations always used to be the companions of songs of rebellion in the tradition. Although there are quite a number of songs commemorating Emmet and his associates, or at least referring to them, the Swiss scholar Georges Zimmermann, who examined some 12,000 Irish broadside songs from the period 1780 to 1900 for his masterly PhD thesis of 1965, which has been which was published and has recently been republished as Songs of Irish Rebellion, Zimmerman found that no contemporary 1803 broadside ballads exist commemorating Emmet's rebellion. Broadsides being those single-sided sheets which were sold for a penny or a halfpenny or less from the 1600s right through to the 1950s on the streets. I can't contradict this finding of Zimmerman's, and I think it's an interesting one. Historians are rightly wary of ballads as historical sources, but they do often reflect historical reality, or at least refract it. Clearly, Emmet's rebellion was not seen as important enough in its own time for the writing of songs. It was not a rebellion for which there was a ballad-buying public. It was a skirmish around the town. Most people, after all, on both sides, disapproved of it. Its symbolic importance for Irish nationalists would only grow gradually over the next century or two, and its elements of youth, social position, personal nobility and courage, self-sacrifice, doomed love, failure and death would increase in power in the course of the 19th century and reach their apotheosis possibly in the 1916 rebellion. However, not too long after Emmet's death in 1804, a collection of songs entitled The Patriot's Vocal Miscellany, or a collection of loyal songs, was published in Dublin, and in it is a song entitled Rebellion, which attacks Emmet's uprising. It was written by some anonymous loyalist and significantly is dated the 24th of July 1803, the day after the rebellion. There's no music in the volume, but tunes are specified for the songs, and oddly, for this one, a tune with a garbled title in Irish is given. Creana Féilach, that seems to be, which might mean Creana Féile, the heart of hospitality, I don't know. But no such tune title at any rate exists, or at least can be found. So I can only quote some verses from this very first song referring to Robert Emmet and his rising. Dire rebellion, see preparing the gloomy well of night, and her hopeless banners rearing against the king and people's right. Imp of hell, how unsuspected hast thou sprang to light again, rushing on the unprotected with thy worse than tiger train. Save us heaven, see mild Kilwarden bleeds beneath monstrous fangs. Mercy shuts the gates of pardon, and she views as she views the martyr's pangs. It goes on in that strain for some more verses, and it ends. See the rebel horde disperses, baffled in their dire intent. Praise to God for all his mercies, may our cruel foes repent. So that's an instant Dublin loyalist reaction, penned the day after the rebellion. And it's interesting to see the word martyr being used there and applied to Kilwarden, given the later nationalist perspective of Emmet. Emmet's friend Thomas Moore is actually the first person to be credited with the production of a song which is on the side of Emmet and which begins to preserve the nationalist version of his public memory. Moore had the highest regard for Emmet, and even though their ways parted after Emmet was expelled from Trinity, Moore stood by the friendship. Just 4 years after Emmet's execution in 1807, he wrote for the first number of his highly successful Irish melodies 2 songs which commemorated Emmet, but which would hardly have endeared him to the members of the gentry and nobility to which the volume was dedicated, had they properly understood him. The first, O Breathe Not His Name, is inspired by Emmet's wish that his epitaph not be written. The singer here is Jane Cassidy of Belfast from 1995. That's it.
His
Emmet song is When He Adores Thee. Now, I know it's been suggested that this may have been inspired by the memory of Lord Edward Fitzgerald rather than of Emmet, and indeed it may, but it is frequently subtitled Emmet to Ireland, and certainly in terms of public perception, it's an Emmet song. The sheet we put there together there, if you're interested, has a copy of it, and you'll see that there is a subtitle. It's very small print, but there is a subtitle there, Emmet to Ireland. So I think in terms, as I say, of public perception, this can be taken as being about Robert Emmet. The singer here of a few verses is Margaret Burke Sheridan in 1944. Emmet to Ireland. 4 years later, in 1811, Moore was again commemorating Emmet in the fourth number of the Irish Melodies by writing about Sarah Curran and her memories of Emmet. The singer here is John McCormack in 1911. these three melancholy and highly influential songs by Thomas Moore, a stage has been set and notes sounded which will occur and reoccur in the song commemoration of Emmet. Broadside ballads are notoriously difficult to date. They usually appear without even a publisher's name, not to mind a date of publication. There's a small number of 19th century Emmet broadsides, and of these, the earliest seems to be one entitled My Emmet's No More. It might belong to the 1810s or 20s, but then it might belong to the 1830s or 40s. I'm pretty sure, though, that it does belong to the first half of the century from internal evidence. It's influenced by a popular poem of about 1800, The Exile of Erin, and its register of language and its historical perspective are far more literary than normal broadside ballad. But it was quite common in the ballad sheets, and it survived strongly into songbooks of the 20th century. It hasn't been recorded, though, and it doesn't seem to have survived in oral tradition, so I had to record it myself just for purposes of illustration. The air which is specified for the song in many of the sheets is the 18th century air Savornian Dealish. Now there are several airs, or several versions of the air Savornian Dealish, and I've chosen one close to the version used by Thomas Moore. So My Emmet's No More, it's on your handout.
Despairing, her wild-eyed daughter of Erin appeared on the cliffs of the bleak rocky shore. Loose in the wine flowed her dark streaming ringlets, and heedless she gazed on the dread surge's roar. Loud rang her harp in wild tones despairing, the time passed away with the present comparing. In soul-thrilling strains deeper sorrow declaring, she sang Erin's woes and her Emmet's no more. Oh, brave was his spirit, yet mild as the Brahmin. His heart bled in anguish for the wrongs of the poor. To relieve their heart sufferings he braved every danger. The vengeance of tyrants undauntedly bore. Before him the proud titled villains in power were seen, though in ermine in terror to cower. But alas, he is gone, he has fallen a young flower. They have murdered my Emmet's no more. Not surprisingly, Emmet does not figure in the songs of the O'Connell movement, but in a song of the 1830s by the ballad composer and street singer Micheál Mac of the Liberties, alias Zozimus, the song shows that some memory of Emmet's rebellion lived among Zozimus's Dublin street audience and formed part of the whole 1798 sequence in its thinking. The song was a satire attacking a retired Dublin member of the yeomanry who took part in suppressing the 1798 rebellion, and it begins, at the dirty end of Dirty Lane lived a dirty cobbler, Dick McLean. His wife lived in the old king's reign, a stout old orange woman. On Essex Bridge she strained her throat, and 6 a penny was her note. And Dickie wore an old red coat that he got in the yeoman. Goes on then to make fun of Dickie the yeoman and his actions in Wexford and Dublin, all cowardly, all involved attacking women and animals. And it continues, and this is the relevant verse. When Kilwarden dropped in Thomas Street, a crop-eared dog Dickie chanced to meet. He tipped him a brace of balls so sweet, mistaking him for a Roman. At the Weaver's Hall upon the Coombe, when tyranny was in its bloom, many a croppy met their doom from lame duck jury's yeoman. So some memory of Emmet's rebellion remained with the Dublin song audience in the 1830s. While Emmet was admired to some extent by the Young Irelanders, he doesn't appear as the subject of any of their numerous songs, although there is one often reprinted poem, Emmet's Death, in their famous 1845 anthology, The Spirit of the Nation. While it's not my subject, I will just say in passing that there seem to be more poems written on the theme of Robert Emmet than there are songs. One of them, however, Miss Curran's Lament Over the Grave of Robert Emmet by Dr. Madden, biographer of Emmet and the United Irishmen, must have been written in the hopes that it might be sung, because it begins,
The joy of life lives here, Robert Aroon. All that my heart held dear, Robert Aroon. Spouse of my heart, this shrine, this long-lost home of mine, entombs each hope of mine, Robert Aroon. This was obviously written with the song Eileen Aroon in mind, although I doubt if it was ever sung popularly. Most popular Emmet songs, apart from my Emmet's No More and Thomas Moore's song, seem in fact to belong to the second half of the 19th century, although we still have problems about their precise dating. The earliest of these seems to be a ballad sheet decorated by a woodcut of Robert Emmet and entitled Emmet's Grave. It's on the back of the handout. No melody survives for it, and although one source specifies that it was sung to the air Wolfe Tone's Grave, it doesn't fit the air that we know by that name, which anyway was a later song. But interestingly, from an internal reference, which you probably pick out there, it seems to have been written in 1864. If so, it has to be reckoned as a ballad of the Fenian period, and it's interesting also to remember that the Fenians modelled themselves to an extent on the United Irishmen. The point of the song is to encourage the achieving of Irish freedom in order that Emmet's epitaph may be finally written, and the verses can be read as an incitement to rebellion after a period of inactivity. So, 60 years after his death, more than 60 years after his death, Emmet's rebellion was again becoming politically relevant. There is a second undated ballad sheet, Emmet's Farewell to His Love, also on the handout there, which uses, as you'd see, the same woodcut, same decoration, and the same typeface as Emmet's Grave, and is clearly the work of the same publisher, and therefore this must be taken also as a ballad of the Fenian period. It's definitely a song because, remarkably, it's been recorded at least twice in recent years from elderly traditional singers. The fact that one of these was recorded in the extreme north of the Inishowen Peninsula in Donegal and the other on the extreme west coast of Clare suggests that the ballad was widespread as well as long-lived. The Clare singer was the late Tom Lenihan of Milton and Malbay, who learnt it from an Irish-American songbook of about 1900, in which the ballad sheet had been reprinted. The Donegal singer, whom we're about to hear singing the first and last verses, was the late Maggie McGee of Inishowen, who probably learnt it from her parents. Recorded in 1993 in street ballad style, it's what used to be called Camolia.
I'm going to leave you. The pale moon is shining no longer on me. In a truth I swear that I never did deceive you. For next to my heart is green and deep. Farewell, oh, farewell, oh, the words are not spoken. The pale moon no longer is shining on me. Farewell, oh, farewell, oh, I the death token. Nevermore in this wide world young Emmet you see.
But his name was appearing regularly in lists of patriots featured in nationalist songs. For example, this is from Harding's Dublin songs for the period. Brave Emmet, Fitzgerald and Grattan have died in defence of the tree, while Micheál and O'Connell predicted that the plant would see Ireland free, from a street ballad called Ireland's Liberty Tree. And on a Boer War broadside of 1900 we get, and soon, my boys, we all shall see on Ireland's soil again our dashing, dauntless John McBride with all his fighting men. They'll raise the flag of Emmet, Tone and Micheál up once more and lead us in fight to drive the tyrant from our shore. It's a broadside called John McBride's Brigade, and there are many such appearances. According to Zimmerman, by about 1900, the favourites in such lists in nationalist songs were Robert Emmet and O'Donovan Rossa. As we come to the end of this presentation, many of you will be thinking, what about the Robert Emmet song? The song that we'd all think of first if we were asked to come up with an Emmet song. I mean, of course, the Dublin street song we now call the Bold Robert Emmet, or simply Robert Emmet. And the reason it hasn't been mentioned until now, as you've guessed, is that it's not a song of Emmet's time, nor indeed probably even of the 19th century, but a song of the period of the Emmet centenary. It seems to have been written about 1900. It was published as a broadside song in commemorating style and entitled The Last Moments of Robert Emmet, that's its official name. It was published by the Broadside ballad printer PCD Warren and is sometimes attributed to a ballad composer called Tom Maguire. As it is the Emmet song of our own time, very popular in the ballad revival of the 1960s and again in the north of Ireland over the last 3 decades, I've asked Barry Gleeson to sing it for us live.
I learned this from Conwell Ogden's book, but I associate it generally with Jerry O'Reilly, who has a great version of it. The struggle is over, the boys are defeated, all Ireland surrounded with sadness and gloom. We were defeated and shamefully treated, and I, Robert Emmet, awaiting my doom. Hung, drawn and quartered, sure that was my sentence, but soon I will show them no coward am I. My crime is the love of the land I was born in. A hero I lived and a hero I'll die. Bold Robert Emmet, the darling of Erin. Bold Robert Emmet will die with a smile. Farewell, companions, both loyal and daring. I lay down my life for the Emerald Isle. The bark lay at anchor, awaiting to bring me over the billows to the land of the free. But I must see my sweetheart, for I know she will cheer me, and with her I will sail far over the sea. But I was arrested and cast into prison, tried as a traitor, a rebel, a spy. But no one can call me a knave or a coward. A hero I lived and a hero I'll die. Bold Robert Emmet, the darling of Erin. Bold Robert Emmet will die with a smile. Farewell, companions, both loyal and daring. I lay down my life for the Emerald Isle. Hark the bells tolling, I well know its meaning. My poor heart tells me it is my death knell, and in come the clergy, the warder is leading. I have no friends here for to bid me farewell. Goodbye, old Ireland, my parents and sweetheart. Companions in arms, to forget you must try. I'm proud of the honour, it was only my duty. A hero I lived and a hero would die with a smile. Farewell, companions, both loyal and daring. I lay down my life for the Emerald Isle.
First appearance. The Emmet songwriting tradition didn't end with it. The prolific County Meath songwriter and publisher Brian O'Higgins, Brian O'Donovan, for instance, wrote and published, I think in the 1930s, a song or poem in Irish about Emmet, which began, "Ná Granther Lachdom is not Canther Martley. Let not my memorial stone be inscribed, nor my funeral lamentation be sung." So they're taking up the traditional theme. And in 1940, Seamus and Leah published in Dublin an Irish language translation of the poem Robert Emmet, beginning on Cahanish Hearth is na Buchali Builte. In our own time, the Dublin dancer and musician Paddy Vaughan Bryn wrote a song called Young Emmet, which was very popular in the 1960s. And you also find odd 20th century outcroppings of Emmetry in songs about Hibernian marching bands named after Emmet, or in football teams called the Emmets. In final summary now, I would say that the entire range of songs of rebellion in Irish and English is a very wide one. So wide that in concentrating here tonight on Emmet, I could only hint at it. The Emmet songs belong to a certain area of its spectrum. Apart from the one loyalist example quoted, they belong, of course, to the green rather than to the orange. In the green camp, they don't at all belong to the Skull of Oak school of political songwriting. Songs which can be sectarian, hate-filled, bloodthirsty, ignoble. But they belong to the broad stream of idealistic nationalist songs, which emphasise the admirable traits of patriotism which were exemplified in Emmet's own life. There's a highly literary type of Emmet song, as you've heard, and not just Thomas Moore's, and there's a more vernacular street ballad type. In both, we have the strong element of pathos which unify the Emmet songs, and which again arises from Emmet's own story. Art is imitating life. As you've heard tonight, the Emmet songs of whatever kind are either about Emmet centrally or they refer to him peripherally. You've heard snatches of both kinds, and we'll finish now with one from Barry that's somewhere in between. It's a modern song written by the Dublin, I think, songwriter Norman Redden and published here in Dublin in 1956, and it's entitled Three Flowers.
Thanks, there's a bit to join in this one as well, so good sound. I learned this from Nicholas Carolan. One time when walking down a lane as night was drawn nigh, I met a colleen with 3 flowers, and she more young than I. St. Patrick bless you, dear, said I, if you will kindly tell the place where you did find these flowers, I seem to know so well. She took and kissed the forest flower once, and sweetly said to me, this flower comes from the Wicklow hills, dew wet and pure, said she. Its name is Micheál Dwyer, the strongest flower of all. But I'll keep it fresh beside my breast, though all the world should fall. She took and kissed the next flower twice, and sweetly said to me, this flower I called in Antrim fields outside Belfast, said she. The name I call it is Wolftown, the bravest flower of all. But I'll keep it fresh beside my breast, though all the world should fall. She took and kissed the next flower thrice, and softly said to me, this flower I found in Thomas Street in Dublin fair, said she. Its name is Robert Emmet, the beside my breast, though all the world should fall. Then Emmet, Dwyer and Tone I'll keep, for I do love them all, and I'll keep them fresh beside my breast, though all the world should fall.
So I'd like to finally to thank Barry again on behalf of all of us, and also to thank various people who helped me with the subject, among them Terry Moylan, Bill O'Connor, Rena Piogo, Maeve Carolan, Tom Munley, and especially my colleagues in the Irish Traditional Music Archive who assisted in various ways. Joan McDermott, who sang Arbour Hill, Glenn Comiskey, who made the sound recordings, sound transfers, Maggie Brewers, who prepared the sheet facsimiles, and Orla Heelan, who's recording the proceedings. So thank you very much.